Summary of the Prime of Miss Jean Brodie by Muriel Spark. The year is early 1930s. A group of 10-year-old girls at the Marcia Blaine School in Edinburgh, Scotland, start their 2 years of lessons with Miss Jean Brodie, a charming teacher at the junior school who keeps saying she is in her prime. She gives her students a lively but unconventional education that includes poems, makeup, Italian fascism under Mussolini, and her own love life. She does this because she believes that goodness, truth, and beauty are the most important things in life and that the arts are more important than the sciences. Over time, Miss Brodie picks out 6 girls that she really cares about and wants to make into the crème de la crème. These girls are Sandy Stranger, Rose Stanley, Mary McGregor, Jenny Gray, Monica Douglas, and Eunice Gardner. The girls become known as the Brodie set, and Miss Brodie helps them grow culturally and trusts them. In one of the novel's famous fast-forwards, however, we learn that one of these girls will turn Miss Brodie in the end, though Miss Brodie herself never finds out which one. The girls also have 2 other teachers at the junior school. The art master is Mr. Teddy Lloyd, a beautiful and well-mannered Roman Catholic who lost his arm in World War I, and the singing master is Mr. Gordon Lowther, who has short legs and a long body. Both of these men fall in love with Miss Brodie, but Miss Brodie is only deeply in love with Teddy Lloyd, whom she admires for being an artist. Monica Douglas saw them kiss once, but Miss Brodie quickly gives up her love for Teddy Lloyd because he is married and has 6 kids. Instead, while she is on a 2-week leave of absence, she says she is sick. She starts an affair with Mr. Lowther, who is not married. At the same time, Sandy, who is very creative and knows a lot about people's minds, becomes more and more obsessed with Miss Brodie's love life, even imagining that her teacher is having sexual relations. During their 2 years at junior school, Sandy's best friend Jenny is approached by a man who bears his private parts to her near the water of Leith, an Edinburgh river. A female police officer looked into the event. Sandy falls in love with the idea of this policewoman and imagines that she is also a police officer and wants to stop all sex. She also thinks that she and the made-up policewoman should look into Miss Brodie and Mr. Lowther's relationship. When the girls are 12, they leave Miss Brodie's class and move on to the senior school, where they are taught by teachers like Miss Lockhart, who is a great science teacher. All of these teachers follow the official curriculum, unlike Miss Brodie, who didn't. The girls still think of themselves as the Brodie set, even though they don't have anything in common other than being picked out by Miss Brodie. They still see her outside of school, just like they did when they were juniors, going to the dance and other events with her. Miss McKay, the headmistress of Blaine, has been actively working against Miss Brodie's ways of teaching and viewing the group identity of her 6 special girls with disdain. She wants Miss Brodie to leave Blaine and work at a more progressive school, but Miss Brodie turns down the offer. So, Miss McKay tries to get the Brodie girls to tell her anything bad about their old teacher that would help her fire Miss Brodie. Miss McKay also tries to break up the Brodie plan. Both tries fail because the Brodie girls will always be loyal to their beloved teacher and the values of independence, love, and loyalty that she taught them. Miss Brodie's relationship with Mr. Lowther continues. When Miss Ellen and Alison Kerr, 2 sewing teachers at Blaine, start working as housekeepers for Mr. Lowther, they get in the way of Miss Brodie's relationship with him. To show her power, she goes to Mr. Lowther's house whenever the Kerr sisters are there to keep an eye on them. She tells them off for not eating enough of their boss's food and then starts to make Mr. Lowther fat. She also starts to call her 13-year-old special girls to hang out with her at the house of her lover. A lot of the time, she asks them about Mr. Lloyd because some of the girls, especially Rose Stanley, have started to have pictures done by their art teacher. Miss Brodie really likes hearing about how each face Mr. Lloyd paints looks a lot like hers. Mr. Lloyd kisses the young girl, and she doesn't know what to think about it. One day, Sandy points this out to Mr. Lloyd in his studio while snapping at him. While the girls are 13, 14, and 15 years old, Miss Brodie decides that she can fully trust Sandy to be her source and friend. Miss Brodie is also becoming more and more set on the idea that Rose, who is the most natural of the Brodie girls and famous for having sex, even though Rose doesn't want to have sex, should have an affair with Mr. Lloyd in her place. Miss Brody also plans for Sandy to tell other people about the affair. In fact, Miss Brody is so focused on this strange plan that she forgets about Mr. Lowther, who soon gets engaged to Miss Lockhart, the science teacher at the senior high school, much to everyone's surprise. This is also the time when Joyce Emily Hammond, who is rather mad and a bad girl, is sent to Blaine by her wealthy parents as a last option. There's no way for her to connect with the Brody set, no matter how badly she wants to. But Miss Brody will. Miss Brody spends one-on-one time with Joyce Emily and privately supports her plan to run away and fight in the Spanish Civil War under Francisco Franco's nationalist flag. Miss Brody admires Franco, who is a Nazi like Mussolini. Joyce Emily does this quickly and shockingly, but she is killed when the train she is on is attacked. The school has a service to remember her. The Brody girls start to move apart when they are 17 and in their last year at Blaine. Jenny Gray and Mary McGregor both leave before their final tests. Jenny to become a typist and Mary to attend a school for dramatic art. Monica Douglas turns into a scientist, and Eunice Gardner gets a job as a nurse and marries a doctor. Rose is a good wife, and Miss Brody's influence doesn't bother her at all. Sandy chooses to study psychology. During this time, Sandy and Rose, who are both 18 years old, keep going to Mr. Lloyd's house to be models for him. One day, Sandy starts a relationship with Mr. Lloyd while his wife and kids are on vacation. She takes over Rose's part in Miss Brody's plan, since Rose and Mr. Lloyd had never had sex feelings for each other. They stay together for 5 weeks in the summer and after Mr. Lloyd's wife and kids come home. But by the end of the year, Sandy is no longer interested in Mr. Lloyd as a person. Instead, she is only interested in his mind as a painter and how his paintings show his obsession with Miss Brody. She ends up breaking up with Teddy, but she takes his Roman Catholic views with her. In the fall of the next year, Sandy goes up to Miss McKay and makes the vague statement that she wants to put a stop to Miss Brody. She tells Miss McKay that Miss Brody is interested in Nazi politics on the side and suggests that Miss McKay follow up on this lead. By doing so, Miss McKay will finally have the proof she needs to fire Miss Brody. And indeed, Miss McKay finally gets Miss Brody to quit by making a connection between her and Joyce Emily's running away. Sandy has completely betrayed Miss Brody, and she won't be able to believe that it was her best friend Sandy who did it until the end of World War II, when she is going to die soon. Sandy has written a popular book on psychology called The Transfiguration of the Commonplace and is also a Roman Catholic nun known as Saint Helena of the Transfiguration. She is in her middle years. She has had many guests to her convent over the years, mostly Brody girls, and the subject of Miss Brody always comes up. Sandy says that Miss Brody was silly and enlarging, but she also says that neither she nor any other Brody girl owed Miss Brody any loyalty. A young guy comes to the convent one day to talk to Sandy about her well-known work in psychology. He asks her, "What were the most important things that influenced you in school, Sister Helena? Were they about writing, politics, or your own life? Did you say Calvinism?" "There was a Miss Jean Brody in her prime," Sandy replies. It looks like she was the one in the Brody group who was most affected by their strange and charming teacher.
About the author. Muriel Spark, whose real name was Muriel Camberg, was born in Edinburgh to a Jewish father and a Presbyterian mother. From 1923 to 1935, she went to the James Gillespie School for Girls, which was based on the Marcia Blaine School in the prime of Miss Jean Brody. After that, she taught English and then worked as a secretary in a department store. Muriel married Sidney Oswald Spark in 1937 and went to southern Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe, with him. But she quickly learned that Sidney was bipolar and violent. So, Muriel left her husband and their new baby son Robin in 1940. She then moved back to the UK in 1944 and worked as a military intelligence officer until the end of the war. Spark started writing seriously after that, mostly poetry and literary review. But it wasn't until she became a Roman Catholic in 1954 that she had the big picture she needed to start writing novels. Spark wrote and released her first book, The Comforters, 1957, while she was living in London. The money she made from it allowed her to write full-time. After a number of well-reviewed books, Spark's big break came with The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie in 1961. It made her famous and is still widely seen as her best work. Spark then moved to New York City and then Rome, where she met Penelope Jardine, an artist who would become her lifelong friend. They settled down in the town of Civitella della China in Tuscany and spent the rest of their lives together until Spark's death in 2006.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.